Good evening to all of you and welcome to the presentation of Climate Co-Determination now in the Public Climate School of the For Future movement. We are very happy to have you here and to have the opportunity to tell you our claims for the unification of a federal-wide, Germany-wide climate council, citizen climate council. So in an election with 95 agreement, we wanted to distribute our petition and also sign an open letter. So we are quite curious about this latest development in the German climate movement. You can also ask questions through the tweetback, and after the presentation we are going to reply on your questions. And before that, I would like to ask you to give us an atmospheric picture about these links. We want to know how much trust do you have in our democracy, being able to encounter the climate crisis adequately. You can make a vote, you can vote with this link, and I will wait a minute how the atmospheric picture is going to modify. For all of you, for those of you who are new in our presentation, we want to know how high is your confidence, your trust that our democracy can tackle the climate crisis adequately. And we would like you to vote with the code 1014-272. Thank you. Thank you, Mira, for your statement. So we realize that we are moving in the average field somehow, and as far as the trust is concerned. So you may also go a little bit further. Continuing with the vote, I would like to continue with the contents. Before we go into the contents, I would like to present you the speakers of today. My name is Simon Wehden. I was in the IPPC area, so I'm quite familiar with the environmental reports. Janosch, Pfeffer and Mira, Pütz. They both studied political science and especially worked in citizen councils. So Mira also wrote her master thesis in this field. We are members of the Federal Initiative Climate Co-Determination Now. We are an independent initiative of young people who are convinced that we as a society can do more for climate protection. So as the starting point of our initiative, you probably remember quite well. So I would like to remember the atmosphere 1 year ago. The success was very high. The slogan, "We are here, we are loud," because you are telling us the future, really encouraged people to think about this slogan and to rethink certain things. So the claim to listen to science is so easy that the climate protection is really in the center of society now. Climate protection is one of the most important subjects of the voters. But at the same day, where Friday for Future, millions of people went on the road, the federal government is approving its climate package. Ottmar Ringman said that policy did not understand to make the necessary feasible, and the environmental package is a sign for political discouragement. So the climate politicians are really speechless. How can that be? We are the greatest and the loudest environmental movement. Why don't you hear us? And at this point, our initiative starts. We ask ourselves what is missing and how can we encourage our politicians to make the necessary possible. In this presentation, we try to clarify our reply to this question. And a spoiler, just to question the hashtag, is already a very good beginning. The next part will be a homage for you because it refers to your Wuppertal study, but be careful because I interpreted a little bit different and I set other main emphasis to be more clearly about it. So the images in Wuppertal look like this, like most of the climate protection studies. A massive infrastructure extension for renewable energies, less air traffic, less car traffic, automobile traffic, carbon dioxide emissions in the building sector. Okay, the agricultural field is lacking, but we know what would be in less animal products. So far, so well known. So FFN has a good summary of these measures being on the website, being published on the website, and directly taken from the report. The 1.5 degree target for CO2 neutrality until 2035 are possible from technical and economical side, but extremely demanding, of course. And as far as it is also, if the social and political willingness is there are no impossible barriers to reach this target. And in the following, it is stated that the social willingness exists, the support of our demands is enormous, and now it's up to the politicians in all parties to act and react and talk about the climate on a very fact basis foundation. But be careful, it's a pitfall. It sounds a little bit, do not be too quick to draw conclusions. We know that we have to do something and we need to find solutions. We have been hearing these slogans for years, for decades, and we have to ask ourselves, what do we have to do? What is lacking for the implementation of solutions? The report says nothing. If the social willingness is there, and as my colleague Janosch will explain later on, we have all the reasons to deny and to doubt. So we should ask ourselves, how can we support the willingness, the social willingness of 1.5 Celsius degrees. Let's have a closer look on the report, especially in the parts which are not summarized on this page. So the authors, they see that there is a demand of an overall social discussion. And if one or other formulations doesn't sound so good, maybe because it's directly quoted from the study. So this questions occur, and we need to ask ourselves and to give really honest replies. To which extent do we accept as a society the extension of renewable energy structures? Are we prepared to break with routines and to change our behaviors? Are we in a position to draw up transformations and changes for society? Is politics in the position to use and consequently control the stage of transformation? Very consequently, the study does not give any roadmap for the transformation. It more or less gives you a toolbox of individual options, activity options. How we deal with this, we need to decide this as society, and for this we need common visions and common priorities, which support such a study, or which such a study cannot do. And for this reason, you will get to the following result. The discussion and also the social and political struggle for the right solutions for this situation are necessary and need to be led with the highest transparency and honesty in the entire society. And then we can also formulate it like this: to have adequate contributions of Germany to observe the 1.5 degrees Celsius limit, but they can only be made possible by means of a broad agreement and participation of the society. So these insights are nothing new in the scientific results of the Council, of the Scientific Council, Advisory Council. We can also gather this, that as co-determiners and co-designers, the transformation process needs to be legitimated. In other words, climate co-determination, and for the successful transformation, you need more co-determination of the citizens to set an adequate framework for a transparent and honest discussion, as we have already formulated it. And that's what we stand for: the observance of the Paris Agreement targets by using the framework for constructive environment discussion. So we need climate co-determination now. And I described how our claim can be gathered and interpreted, and my colleague is also analyzing from a political scientific point of view why we failed with the implementation of political environmental targets, and we want also to propose our specific suggestion. Thank you, Simon, and also from my side, hello into the round. Before I am going to present you my solutions, or what from our conviction could make a contribution to this solution, I would like to go a little bit deeper so that we understand why the political willingness is missing. So on the next slide, I gave you an overview, like at the beginning, the problem in pictures. You can see this here, a climate demonstration with the claim, listen to us, listen to the scientists, and then the results, the so-called climate package. So here also the quotation of a Professor Edenhofer. Policy did not understand what to do. They did not understand to do the necessary things here. And that's why I appeal you to do something here. And I will not contradict to this. So we need to ask ourselves the question, why? Why are politicians so discouraged in their way of deciding in environmental policy? And we need to state that it does not really depend on the individual politicians. So to such a strong extent, but I would formulate the thesis that it's maybe not the parties who are represented in the government, but that it's maybe a basic problem, the cooperation with our political institutions. I'm not talking about the climate democracy, but it's obvious that we can observe that in our representative democracy, as it is structured today, we do not manage to tackle the climate crisis. And I would like to go in details why this is the case. I have mentioned already the deficits of our democracy. These are not new, but they are very essential. And I would like to talk about them again. The first point, politicians, of course, submit a strong system protection to represent their party, to represent their democratic understanding. But the problem, of course, is that the election periods are quite short, and the climate crisis, again, implies long-term challenges. So maybe in the next legislate for future generations, it's more difficult because compared to the problems which are obvious on a short-term level, like jobs, for example. And the second point, the interest of the interest groups. So there are a lot of important influential players, like the automobile industry, different industries here. So these players are often stopped to a certain extent when they are talking about the acceleration of climate protection or climate crisis. So also the observance of the Paris Agreement, Agreement is a big challenge, and we need a fundamental transformation in our social and economic life. So there is the problem of breaking up society, and also the risk of the lack of trust in our political institutions. We have been observing this for years, and very impressively in the Corona crisis. And this quotation refers to speeches and quotations of CDU politicians, for example, one of Mrs. Kramp-Karrenbauer. Without being too speculative here, the Green Party is also very concerned, but not mentioning them in public. So the point here is that if we get very specific in climate crisis politics, environmental policy, if we talk about the concrete design, the specific design, or the amounts of certain measures, we need broad parts of the society who are supporting us, who are supporting these targets. So from climate political perspectives, you can say, okay, we were there. You can see the picture here with more than 1 million people. We were on the road, we were on the street. If this does not show social support, Yes, definitely. So good this protest is, last not least, because it influences the public opinion. It doesn't seem to be efficient, and this may have two reasons. The first reason, the question remains, how representative is this process? There are many people, but you may ask the question, at any case, are we talking about the majority? Is this the center of the society? And as a politician, you can use it as a keyword. You can use it as an initial point. And the second point is here: what is about when we go to the nitty gritty of it, about specific measures? So the survey shows that the public opinion, the public support for climate protection very generally is very high and has grown to a certain extent since Friday for Future. But when we talk about specific targets, specific objectives, the support is not so strong. This can be seen in the surveys. So should we really get rid of our measures, of our targets here? No, we should not. If we have identified these problems, how can we improve our democracy? And here we want to involve the citizen mandate. And we are convinced that citizen councils can supplement our politicians very reasonably, our political system very reasonably. And the systems which I address, they can address certain problems. And the one or the other of you would probably ask, what are citizen councils? And we would like to show you a short video, maybe it works. I don't feel very well, a little bit sick as far as the climate is concerned. Germany, what's wrong with you? Are you able to help me? Well, I try, but it's not easy anyway. The human beings in Germany, they are full of controversies. The one want more climate protection, the other are afraid that jobs are lost or that the economy is losing. So now there is hope. A Germany-wide council concerning climate policy. Citizens which are selected by accident are asked if they can counsel the Federal Republic, the government, and the interested 150 are selected, supporting the German institution or representing the German society. And during many weekends, they are asked by independent experts. Hosted discussions in small groups help them to express their own opinions, also the requirements, integrating the scientific insights and experiences, and then they work out recommendations for socially justified policy, and they show the government what is a well-informed sample and opinion atmosphere of the citizens in Germany. In Ireland, Great Britain and France, these surveys have already been carried out, and I could help you much better. You are also in favor of such a citizen council, then sign our petition. Okay, well, I would like to summarize the four main points which are essential for such a council, for such a citizen council. And the 4 points which we have listed on our slides consisted of who is involved in such a council citizen. These are citizens, normal citizens, who have been elected, who have been selected. Everybody has the same chance to be selected. It's a sample of society if you want. It's just a random sample. And the second point here is that the people are informed about scientifically with balanced scientific information. And the third point, in small groups, measures are taken, and we discuss about the subjects we've learned, about certain discussion subjects with a very respectful exchange of arguments and information, and then the participants are supported by professional hosts And finally, the Civil Council gives recommendations to the politicians, to the federal government, to the parliament, depending on the content and on the intention. Why is the council such a good instrument for an optimal climate policy? You can see it on the next slide. Thank you very much. As I said, a citizen council can reduce the deficits of our democracy, which I have addressed. So because the participants are selected by accident and they are not elected, they are not voted, so they don't need to orient themselves towards the votes of the citizens. They can be free in their discussions, in their realization, in their opinions, in order to make measures, to initiate measures. The second point is that not the individual interest of certain groups are in the foreground, but more the overall social interests, in contrast to the normal legislation process, in which interest groups try to integrate their ideas and their targets as far as, for example, the Coal Commission, where certain interest groups are involved. And the last point here is that the Citizen Council is in the position to give trustful and appropriate information, so that this implies acceptance of the citizens, because the Citizens Council is not a sample of society, so we can reply what would society recommend integrally if it had time to deal with the scientific insights, the scientific experience, and the time to discuss these items with others. So this may sound very well, but which environmental measures need to be initiated, or which do we recommend? And what do you have to bear in mind if you want to realize such a climate council to be influential for policies? These are very good questions, and this is the reason why my Mira is going to reply these questions. Thank you very much. And also a warm welcome from my side, and that you're here with us. So we have various arguments which we demonstrated to you, and I would like to specifically talk about civil councils or citizen council, and which experience other countries had with these councils, and which scientific background exists for this movement in climate policy and climate movements. This is our last part, and after that we will have approximately 20 minutes for questions from you, which we reserved. So I would like to receive your questions. Please ask questions, and we will try to reply them. So first of all, I would like to talk about what changes citizen councils can imply. What is the very special thing about these councils? The second, which factors are decisive for the political influence of civil councils? If we have defined this space for discussion and the activity recommendations exist, how can we manage that they are implemented in policy? And the third, the broad outlook with democracy, climate protection. Coming back to the question which we asked at the beginning, your trust, how does your trust look like? So I would like to have a hopeful reply and feedback here. Why can these citizen councils imply changes? What is very important? We listen to science, to scientists, and we can build a bridge. So the broad status of science is represented for a citizen council. There are 20 to 30 different sciences from different disciplines who are invited to give a very broad overview of their insights. Different scenarios are presented, implying the different activity recommendations to say, okay, if we don't do this, we need to do without that, and so on, to make clear what are we talking about. SUV, if we allow SUVs, for example, which costs are in place. And here is the third point, that the status of science is accessible for all and can be integrated into the social debate. And this is in the framework of a civil council distributed via video to everybody so that everybody has access to it. 100 people are selected by coincidence, and all can observe it. Everybody can observe it, can follow it. So we have the activity options, which are much more obvious. And what is very exciting about this is the citizen councils can have a very strong impact on public welfare. And in Ireland, there were some studies which were implemented, and it makes it different if we only give information or if we give the people information and also bring them together into a room where they discuss with each other in a very respectful manner and where we try to find out where do they want to go. And it's very good that by means of this exchange, the focus is much more on the integral social issues in question, and that we tackle the climate crisis within this context. And what is very important about this is what I've already explained. We hope that the acceptance of the climate measures is much higher because it comes from the entire society, that people are working on this all together, and it is a representative sample of the society, and everybody can say, okay, there's somebody in there who represents my perspective, who thinks about my perspective. I don't need to have blind trust in this. And to get back to Janosch again, it's a big signal to the politicians that it's like a present, if you want, that we make such a sample, a social sample, and that we say, okay, with this information we want to support the policy, and it's much more effective than a simple survey, because in such a citizen council the people get their space for talking, for discussions, for new suggestions, for new stimuli, and this is a stronger type of co-determination. So that's I wanted to say about the background, which activity recommendations are important, and I would like to show you two examples. One is the example of Ireland, where a citizens' council concerning different topics was established, like for example abortion, but also made some statements with regard to climate change. And I selected two political decisions to see what such a citizen council can produce. One is the quotation that the state should set priorities for the extension of public traffic, media traffic in a ratio of 2:1, and the participants in Ireland made a vote, and 92% supported it, and we made a clear statement. We want the priority, and also we want the figures, that more money is invested so that the policy can be supported and encouraged again. And what is also a very exciting point is that the participant of 98 approval that the climate change must be thought and considered in all political decision processes. And very specifically, we need an independent committee which is checking all the suggestions and proposals of the legislation if they are compatible with the environmental targets of the Irish government. And it's very thrilling because we also have citizen councils as a supplement for our political decisions, and it's very interesting to see how these councils, they can transfer these ideas and expectations to the politicians and to design it a little bit different so that we have a good perspectives to our climate changing targets. And as far, I would like to give you another very current example from France. So the Citizen Council gave 149 activity recommendations. I cannot read them out to you in detail, of course, but I have chosen 3 of them, which are very exciting aspects. On the one hand, the basic directive decision. So this quotation, the Republic guarantees the maintenance of diversity of species, the maintenance of the environment, and the fight against the climate change. So this was suggested by the participant in the first chapter of the French Constitution, to take this up in the Constitution, also with the decision from the public. So this means specifically that we set standards. So Citizen Council can make basic directive decisions and very specific regulations concerning air traffic. We know that domestic flights are quite harmful for the environment, and at the same time there are other people who say, I want to get very quickly from A to B. So the participants said, okay, we recognize this. We have discussed about this several times, and we think that it's acceptable that from 2025 domestic flights will be forbidden until there is a cost-efficient alternative which does not take more than 4 hours for the journey. And we said, okay, it's also legitimate to say only to be fast is not possible. So social justice was a big issue in France. You probably remember the yellow vest protests were the pioneers of these movements, taking part in social issues, getting involved into social issues and political measures. Poor people are very much concerned in this context, and there's one interesting example in France: the sustainable production of nutrition, of food for everybody. It should not only be something for affluent people, but also for everybody. So I'm talking about the second point now. How do citizen councils need to be introduced that they can have a political impact? So I wrote my master thesis that different civil councils were compared. I had a look at the structures of these councils, and for me it was very important, the political embedding from the beginning to the end. So ideally that a council is appointed by the government, and the government says directly, okay, this specific question we will transfer to the participants, and that they make approvals for the afterward. Macron did this. You can see this. He was at the French Climate Citizen Council, and he said, I oblige myself to do this without any filtering. He showed a great commitment, and it could be seen that over all this time of such a citizen council, from the start to the beginning, civil courage and civil commitment due to the social pressure when a council is being appointed, but also when these recommendations are realized. We will definitely follow this, how it goes on in France in the future. And just at the end of my presentation, I would like to ask the bigger question about democracy and climate policy. We were very aware of the fact that there need to be a council for the climate policy in Germany and democracy, because by this we can mitigate the dissatisfaction of the citizens, and we can improve the situation, because this council also implies the option that we take the citizens seriously, that we want to listen to their opinion. As I have already said, it's a very relevant subject that we are talking about, very extensive co-determination here. And as I've already mentioned it's the fact that citizen councils give very extensive recommendations, like for example for the climate policy, they went beyond the targets compared to policy. So this means a signal: we need more democracy, we need more co-determination, and on this basis we get to an improved climate policy. And it really gives me hope, because if you observe, if you have a look at these councils, if you see the participation of the people, that everybody is deciding on certain issues, this really gets closer to the democratic ideal. This shows that we need more democracy in the terms of climate policy. And that's why the process design is so important. And the citizen councils clearly showed that they deliver very good solutions. And if we go back, we need political embedding, we need public pressure. And from our environmental co-determination, we started a petition for the German government. It's online. It would be wonderful if you could support us, and if you could sign this petition, that we can set a clear sign that we need a citizen council, that it is supported and claimed by many people. You see it on our website, petitionclimatecodetermination.now. You will get further information. You can sign. And I would like to thank you for your time, for your attention, and also to the interpreters, of course. Thank you very much for their work. I hope that we were not too fast. Everything is fine, and we are prepared to receive your questions, when we are quite excited about your feedback on Tweetback. Maybe Enno is going to give some more explanations with the social media channels, maybe to just record it as far as the distribution of petition is concerned. Fridays for Future, the delegated opinion showed that 95% of the delegates were of the opinion that Fridays for Future should really give the support, that we get a quorum of 50,000 people, which we want to reach during the next 3 weeks. So you are the greatest and loudest environmental movement of all times, and we hope that we will get your vote and your participation, and we hope that, Mira, in the meantime, you have the possibility to go into the Tweetback. There are 2 questions which remember me, or which I would like to ask our politician scientists. I would like to ask, first of all, how should the recommendations be realized by the side of the government, or by speakers, or by scientific assistants? How do you... So both as possible, I think. It's a question how we see it. As far as I know, we have not really specifically made a clear position, or made a clear statement here as far as this is concerned. So I think the government should oblige itself to take up the recommendation in the legislation. I don't know the terminology in detail, but it requires that there is no referendum afterwards. There are different models which can be realized, and different opinions, of course, how to realize, and preferences, what to do. In France, the participants, it was opened for the participants if a recommendation which they have adopted, if they directly give it to the parliament, or if they prefer to make a referendum afterwards. And the citizens decided this way: 149 recommendations altogether, and 3 in favor of a referendum. I can't remember the exact figures, but it was like, so the figures are right. Thank you very much for the question. And the risk which this question implies, that a referendum, that the informed activity recommendations are taken back again, if we haven't managed to convince the rest of the population with a citizen council. This risk exists. So if I could dream now, and if we say, okay, we can manage to build up these citizen councils on government level, on national level, and that we can achieve an independent media landscape if we have a good conversation and information climate all over the country. I think it's not such a problem, really. So these decisions are a great option, I think. But there were cases in 2004, for example, where there was a citizen council at a very early stage in a Canadian federal state for a reform of an election, and it was denied, it was rejected because they didn't have enough information. So you really need to take care, you really need to watch out what you combine, and so because we are talking about detailed questions here. And sometimes it's good to have these public decisions, and sometimes it may have disadvantages. And we have this filter given or provided by the government if they implement it or not. And there's always the fear that things are not implemented. There's always a field of tensions, a democratic field of tensions. So citizen councils are a new instrument, and it's a little bit of testing, and we need to try it out a little bit. You never can anticipate the own dynamics because the recommendations exist, and which dynamic it implies, the protests together with different other events. It's not easy to anticipate, it's not easy to foresee. So it's quite exciting to test it out and to see what happens. Thank you very much, Mira. And currently, when we are talking about public decisions, it's not possible currently. So maybe if this will take place next year, it's improbable that these references will be introduced at federal level. So for our specific claims, this does not really play a big role. Otherwise, I would go to the next issue. When we talk about the Greens, so they took up citizens' councils in their programs. I think it's super that you involved this message and that the media were reporting on this very quickly. And when you followed this, we were founded this last year, and where nobody really was interested in this. So I can clearly say that we are not sponsored by the Green Party, but we welcome very much that more and more parties say that all parties are concerned here, that we realize that there is a new consensus going into this direction from all parties, and it's quite exciting to be part of it. I don't know if the others want to add something within this context. I would like to go to the next question because we need that we are able to cope with all the questions. Just to point out, you can also, if you are very interested in one or the other questions, we know which question needs to be replied first. I would like to answer the question which was asked, how are the people elected, or how are they selected? I would like to use the example of Great Britain, where also such a citizen council selection was taking place. 30,000 people were selected by accident. They got a letter to take part in this selection, and some data were requested: which sex, which age, which background, how is their opinion about the climate change, in order to make sure on the basis of this data. In a second step, we got some feedback, and then again, on the basis of this feedback, a second time it was selected coincidentally, and the parties of this citizen council, and it was a strategic key points were chosen, and the population according to certain criteria: age, sex, attitudes, education, representative facts. So it's a two-stage procedure in order to make sure that the entire society is represented here. I have an interesting question which I selected. isn't it a little bit choosy maybe if the recommendation that one recommendation is taken out and others which do not correspond to the capitalistic system that they are not taken up and not treated? I think it's a very relevant and a very exciting question. And in science, there is a cherry-picking system, and we don't know at this stage a lot about this because a lot of processes at national level have not been elaborated, like in France, Ireland, and Great Britain. And what we assume, or what we can speculate, is that from this cherry picking, this very much depends on the issues, on the questions, and also on the recommendations which are given. Like, for example, in France, the issue of 149 recommendations are given. These cherry-picking processes is a little bit more simple because despite the fact that Macron said in France that he wants to give the recommendation directly to the parliament without filtering it. So if there were only 2 recommendations, of course, this would be much more represented in the public and it would be much more discussed and cherry picking would be more difficult. We don't know a lot about this and many details need to be structured, need to be defined for this. I would like to supplement here. Of course, the political process, and it's open in the end. However, also in France, we could see that public pressure is very relevant. So the participants they have established their own association, they've built a website where they have a tracker if the government has implemented its recommendations, to which extent, if it's green, red, orange, regardless of the color. So Macron always confirmed that publicly they can say we are satisfied with the results or not. So here we have options to reduce cherry picking, and it depends on the civil society in the end what they are doing with this catalogue of a civil council. And I would like to go into detail in these issues, and some of you supported this question. How are the experts selected? Here, when the government says, okay, we want to appoint such a council, it goes to an independent organization, which again builds a leading committee, a steering committee. In France, they were well-known persons, Janosch, who negotiated the Paris Climate Agreement. So these are people with expertise who are very well-known in society and who again build a scientific committee. And then again, there is a broader committee of scientists giving presentations and lectures and on the basis of their technical expertise according to scientific criteria. I would like to point out within this context, because we frequently were confronted with the question if the participants are manipulated. I would say no, this is not the case, because on the one hand, it's a very broad range of people who are invited. Not only 20, 30 experts are invited, also people from civil society, from industry, who always are sitting in the podium and nobody is able to dominate the debate. And I would like to ask the counter question, what happens if we would not integrate any experts? The citizens would deal with their semi-knowledge, with the lack of information originating from different channels. And due to this semi-knowledge, they would make decisions. And in this context, I say we don't know where this information comes from and how independent they are, if it covers all the activity recommendations we have available. So I say it's much better to use the science knowledge, to use the scientific knowledge, listen to the scientists, and then again combining it with democratic means to say, okay, these are the insights we have. How can we combine them with our demands, with our requirements? What can we do as a society? May I choose a question? Because I would like to ask the question, can a citizen council meet the requirements or increase the requirements that the trust in the institutions goes even beyond? I'm not a political scientist. The other can say something with regard to this. And we talked to some participants of the civil councils, and we found out that the people who participated 6 weekends, for example, who took part in these progresses, they realized how complicated such political decisions are, and they realize and they have a stronger understanding of how difficult the job of politician is, and they feel appreciated that they can participate in this, but I believe that it's an aid, and it should really abolish the parliamentary republic. And I don't think that the trust into the institutions is weakened. I think that it will be a supplement for democracy, building up trust in the representative democracy. If you have the feeling, okay, they listen, and they listen to the civil council, and this is a precondition that the recommendations of the citizen council will be listened to in policy. And if this is not the case, it will have adverse effects and harmful effects, and that's why we stress that we are really talking about strong politician mandates and about high political interest in this citizen councils. So we need to come to an end now, and I think this issue is one of the most important points which has been analyzed in scientific studies, and I think it's basically that not only the people participating in this, that they increase their self-efficiency, but the people listening to it, that there is something existing like a citizen council. They have an increased political self-efficiency. They have trust in being able to move something and higher confidence in the political systems, according to the studies. So we need to come to an end now, unfortunately. I think we have even 1 minute. So I would like to ask the counter question. Is maybe an alternative, is it a good alternative to continue like we have done before, to continue we have done all the time? We need more trust in politics, we need more trust in each other, and can we realize it? Are the people able to do this? Are the people selected in citizen councils able to do this? And the great thing is that yes, they can. And thank you very much for your attention. Please sign our petition, support us, and nice evening to you. Bye-bye.